Okay, welcome back. Now we're ready to do our full sketch, and this is going to go all out in spending our time designing this lovely apple again, whereas before we just did some quick little sketches to see what the textures and techniques would bring in terms of results, so you can keep this as a reference. And what I really want you to do is concentrate on a nice single sketch now. So if we just move this to the side, I'm going to use the same reference that I've used for the particular sketches of that apple, so I've got it on the screen again, and I'm going to use a different watercolor paper. Previously, the one that I used on this one was a normal smooth surface hot pressed watercolor paper, and it was just a normal grade watercolor paper. It wasn't 100% cotton, it was just a normal paper grade watercolor paper. But now I want to use a nice decent quality paper, so I'm using a cold press paper that's 300 GSM, and it's Arches. In fact, it's a beautiful Arches cold press 100% cotton watercolor paper. So try using different grades of paper to see what textures you can produce with these wonderful pencils. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to use this nice small kind of cutout size. It's approximately A5 this size, so I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use all the techniques that we've gone through in the first class, in this class, using these lovely apple kind of designs that we did, going through exactly the same things, not doing anything different. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use some other mediums to really make this into a lovely mixed media sketch, and I'm going to go in with a lot more detail than what I did before. I'm going to think about adding in some shadow work, using my Posca markers for highlights, and also using some lovely brush markers like these water-based brush markers to add in some depth with some darkness overtones. But again, whatever mediums you have for this full sketch, if you want to follow it step by step, you can do, but it's just to give you an idea of what you can do with these Inktense pencils that we've got, these wonderful Inktense pencils and other mediums, so that you can really explore this medium and start creating some gorgeous results. So if you don't want to follow this step by step, then that's absolutely fine. Just watch it. The actual video itself is going to be sped up, because I'm not going to spend over an hour drawing something and expecting you to watch it step by step. So it will be a nice quick video where you can see what I'm doing, and I will talk and explain what I'm doing at what stage, and I can't wait to get started. But I think I might have to get myself a drink first. So let's get ourselves a nice tea, and then get our reference picture up, get comfy, relax, remember what mediums we're going to use, and tidy our desk. And I think that'll be a perfect way to start our full sketch. So I'm going to grab myself a tea. I'm going to let you sit back and relax and watch me design this lovely apple scene with the apple in there. I might add in a little colour background or whatever I feel like, depending on the tea that I'm drinking. So let's do that now. I'm back. So I've just got myself a nice ginger tea, and I'm ready to do my sketch. So I've started off with a nice pencil outline of the apple. You can see the apple on the top right hand corner, the same reference image that we're using, just drawing in some rough kind of contours and lines. Then I'm going straight in with that beautiful sun yellow colour, just like we did in the exercises. And then we're going in over with that beautiful poppy red. And again, it's going in dry first method, just like we did in the class lessons. And then at the bottom, we're adding that gorgeous Shiraz. And on top of that, I'm also adding in a bit of that leaf green on top to create some beautiful blends of colour. And then with a bit of willow, and then having a nice sip of me lovely ginger tea. And now we're ready to add in that lovely water to create that gorgeous blend of colour, just like we did in our class. And that's what it's all about, just building in these beautiful colours, just giving them a nice little wet with a damp brush, not oversaturating with water too much. Let the Inktense work for you, let it create that magic. And then now what I'm doing is just drying it up with my dryer, and now it's nice and dry, and I can work on the stalk again. Just added in those same colours like I did before, the willow, the leaf green, and that beautiful charcoal grey. away, giving it a nice little dry again, making sure that we're nice and dry in between our layers. And now I'm adding in that texture, so creating some hatching lines and cross hatching lines with the Shiraz and the poppy red, and then with just following that same kind of lesson structure and method of going in layer by layer and then just building in more and more detail. I've spent a lot more longer doing this than I did with the exercises. You can see it's really bringing out that contrast. Now what I'm doing is adding in some green dots here and there and just giving them a little bit of a wet with that Shiraz at the bottom and a bit of charcoal grey, and you can see it really brings out the deep contrast in this lovely little sketch. It's looking more realistic, although we're not working on realism, it's just sketching. So it's nice and dry now again. Now I'm going to go in with my Posca markers rather than going in straight, so just testing them out and going in with those little stipple dots of the yellow. It looks really nice. It just brings in those kind of like extra highlights, and then adding in some white marks on the right hand side just to give it a nice little pop of colour and add another dimension to the sketch. Now I'm going in with my Lumos coloured pencil. It's a dark shade of black, just to add in some kind of dark lines and tones, just to give it that effect that I always like to do. Again, this is very stylized because this is my personal way of drawing, what I really like to do. You don't have to go in so much detail in your full sketch or your class project. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taping up my piece of paper, which I should have probably done from the start, but there you go. You learn as you go along and you just forget because you enjoy yourself so much. So what I'm going to work on now is the background, and with the background I've just added in that willow colour on the bottom and a nice light shade of blue on top, and then I'm adding some white on the top right hand side and then going in with a darker blue on the left just to create some layers, and then on the left hand side I've just added a darker shade of the charcoal grey, and then I'm going to wet the lighter part first with some nice decent amount of water, just letting it all blend and let those colours create that beautiful blend in the background. Same again with the bottom part, again going into the lighter shade first and then just overlapping with the darker, and it creates this gorgeous effect, doesn't it? So quick and easy to do. So I would recommend that you try doing this, especially when you're doing your class project. So everything is nice and dry now. Now I'm going to use the dip method, but this is another technique I've actually used over here in the class, so I'll slow this part down a little bit. So what I've actually done here is, this is actually a technique that I did in my watercolor pencil class, that if you've watched that you would have seen me do this, where I actually go ahead and I dip the brush first into the water and I pick off the colour from the tip of the actual pencil. We've not covered this particular method in this Inktense series yet. We've actually covered this in my watercolor pencil class, and this is an additional method that you can use if you want to go in with just pure colour on a brush like you would do with normal watercolor. It's really nice to kind of try different techniques out as you go along, so do try that out in your class project, or try it out if you're following along in this full sketch, and that just gives you some nice subtle colours where you don't have to worry about dipping the pencil. You're just using the brush like traditional watercolour. So again, all I'm doing is adding in a little bit more water, a bit more pigment from the pencil, using the brush, and then I'm just spreading it out so we have a nice bit of dark where we've got a little bit of shadow, and then it's the drying process again, very important, as I keep saying, to dry in between your layers. And now I'm just going in with that beautiful willow colour again on top of what's already dry, adding in a little bit of the charcoal grey, and then just giving it a nice little wet just to create some more texture lines and give it that kind of other dimension to stop it from looking too flat. And there you go, there's the reveal, tape all removed. Final little bits and bobs now. We're going to use that dip method where we're going straight in with that poppy red to really add in some more nice elements of colour to the overall sketch itself, and I think that just adds further depth and texture to this sketch. And I think this is about it now. So all I'm doing here is I'm just drying it out, final dry using the dryer. If you don't have a dryer, just go for a little walk, go for a little break, have a tea and see how it goes, and it should dry fairly quickly. So all I'm doing now is just adding in some more little diddy dots with my white Posca marker, giving it a little dry, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my brush markers. So my brush markers that I use are really nice water-based brush markers. The tones that I've got are the grey tones, warm grey and cool grey, and I'm just using these to mute out some of those highlights and just add in a little bit more depth, a bit of shadow work, just to give overall balance to the overall illustration itself. And again, adding in a bit of cool grey there onto the foreground and the background areas where we got the blue, just to add a bit more interest. Okie dokie, finally the actual design is complete. So I spent quite a long time on this one. I think it took me well over an hour, but I did it in stages. I took a few breaks while I was doing it, and you can see the overall kind of design looks quite nice. It looks quite kind of jazzy and quite themed in its kind of colour and its mood and atmosphere, compared to the nice bright colours that we had for our sketch exercise that we did. But again, that's my particular style. As I mentioned before, I like to use a lot of contrast in my artwork. I just think it gives it a lot of character, and again, with a lot of my work that I do, I write some poetry to go alongside it, so it's a specific style. But again, if this isn't the style that you want to do, if you want to keep it nice and airy and light and vibrant and beautiful, then go ahead and do that. Try using some of the methods that I've gone through in this full sketch by adding in maybe some coloured pencil, like colour pencil that I was using, the Lumos one over here, just to add in some hatching lines over once everything is dry, and then maybe adding in some grey tones with some water brush colours if you have them, and then maybe using some Posca markers to just add in a couple of highlights and dots, see what it does, see what results you get, and now you've got yourself a nice kind of library of techniques and skills using Inktense pencils to start creating some beautiful artwork. So give this full sketch style a go if you really want to. Try applying some of these techniques to maybe another fruit, a strawberry or a pear or a banana, whatever you fancy eating on that day. One of your 5-a-day fruits. You should be eating your fruits, absolutely. Not all about chocolate. We need to go healthy as well. So draw whatever you like to eat. Apply this kind of method of dry first and then letting it dry, building the layers, using some cross hatching, using the dip method, using other mediums for your beautiful class projects, and I can't wait to see what you produce. So I think now I need a rest, and I'm going to go out to the coffee shop, get myself a nice coffee, get myself a nice little treat, yes indeed, and then I'll come back and then we'll do some final thoughts.